The information found in this video and related presentation is provided by the Retirement Research Foundation and is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing in this video should be considered to be tax or investment advice. Okay, very excited for today's interview. I'm Danny Rondberg from the Retirement Research Foundation, and with me is the living legend, the economist, the #1 selling author on retirement in the world, Tom Hegna. Tom, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Daniel. Good to be with you.
We're glad to have you here. You know, I've seen you all over PBS. You travel the country. You talk to, huge financial institutions as well as doing seminars. How many seminars have you done, Tom?
I've done over 5,000 public seminars. I've done seminars in every state in America.
Wow. That's incredible. And so let's talk about your background, your history, because now you're an economist. You're somebody who's a recognized, thought leader in this space of retirement. You've really broken through and come up with some groundbreaking and original concepts, and not concepts, really theories on the math and science behind how people should retire. Tell us a little bit about your background. I know you've served time in the military as a colonel, and you work for Fortune 100 companies. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what you did before you're an economist?
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from a small town in Minnesota. I went to college at North Dakota State University on an Army ROTC scholarship. I was commissioned in the military. I spent 6 years active duty, 16 and a half reserve, retired as lieutenant colonel in 2006. I was in the insurance industry for about 30 years. I was an agent, a manager, a national marketing manager, and then a senior executive officer for a Fortune 100 company. And when I was there, I was in charge of their retirement income push. And to do that, I had to read a lot of white papers written by PhDs and economists. And I learned a ton of information about retirement that just wasn't public information. It was all in these academic white papers. And so I took that information and I put it into just plain English. I went out on my own in 2011. I've now written 5 books. I'm in the process of writing my 6th book, but 3 in the United States and 2 in Canada on really the optimal way to retire. Not based on my opinions. None of this is my original stuff. This is all things I got out of PhD white papers that the average person doesn't read. But I put it into plain English where anybody could understand how to retire, how to get the most for the least. Because if you're in retirement, you really can't do it all over again. You got to take what you got and you got to get the most from it. And most people are not doing that. They're living a just-in-case retirement. And so I show them what the math and science shows them they should do. I don't sell any financial products, but the math and science shows you should own them to get the most for the least.
That makes sense. So what you speak to let's talk about this, because Retirement Research Foundation is a company that's built on providing the best education they can to the retiree. Let's talk about, some other maybe more household name companies that you do speak for and work for. Who are you out speaking for right now?
I speak for every major company. So almost any major company in the Fortune 500 that's insurance or investment oriented. I've spoken either to their advisors or they hire me to come in and speak to their clients and prospects. So, just the who's who of the Fortune 500 insurance and investment companies.
Wow. So a lot of household names and firms in there. What is your message to insurance agents and financial advisors while you're out there speaking across the country? What's the big thing you're telling them right now?
Well, again, I show them the math and science behind the retirement, but I also give them powerful words and language that explains it to clients, because consumers get so many mixed messages. You get a lot of mixed messages. Oh, term is the only way to go for life insurance. And all of these are wrong. They're wrong. And I can show them and prove it to you mathematically and scientifically. So I just give them language that resonates with the consumer on how to explain guaranteed lifetime income and paychecks and playchecks, because everybody wants a playcheck in retirement, and
right.
Simple ways to communicate the math and science behind this optimal retirement.
That's perfect. Okay, so let's talk for about a minute about that. I've seen you speak before, and you say that retirement planning is simple, and it becomes simpler and simpler, and you have to ask yourself some key questions. What is the math and science behind the retirement philosophy that you've developed? And what is the simple strategy that you've outlaid for people? Because I heard you say at a talk one time, you said, if I were to ask this room full of people, 500 different advisors, what's the best way to retire? You're going to get 500 different answers.
Yeah.
But there's supposed to be one best way to retire.
Yeah.
What is that, and what's the math and science behind
it? There's a difference between best and optimal, okay?
Okay.
Best, I don't know what's the best. Nobody knows what's going to be the best,
right.
Okay? But optimal, there is one optimal way to retire. And so what math and science does, whenever they have a situation where there's multiple variables, you're never going to know what's best. Optimal means this will be the best more often than anything else will be the best, and then it'll never be the worst. That's what optimal means. So I can never tell anybody what the best is because nobody knows, but I can show you the optimal, your best chance at getting the best. That's what I write about. And Paychecks and Playchecks was my first book. It was very simple, and it came down to 4 very simple concepts. Number 1, you need to cover your basic living expenses in retirement with guaranteed lifetime income. Number 2, you need to optimize the rest of your portfolio to protect yourself against inflation. Number 3, you need to have a plan for long-term care. And number 4, the most efficient way to pass wealth to children, grandchildren, and charities is with life insurance. So that was the 4 simple steps. When I wrote my second book for PBS, Don't Worry, Retire Happy, it kind of expanded into 7 and almost 8, and step number 1, you got to have a plan. You need to work with a financial professional. Number 2, which is very important, you need to understand and maximize your Social Security benefits. Step 3, consider a hybrid retirement. That means work a little longer, save a little more. And then step number 4, you got to have a plan for inflation. Step number 5, you need to cover those basic living expenses with guaranteed income. Step number 6, you need to have a plan for long-term care. Step number 7, use your home equity wisely, because many people, their house is one of the largest assets they have. And then I wrap up with the most efficient way, again, to pass wealth to children, grandchildren, and charities is with life insurance. So similar themes. Paychecks and Playchecks goes deeper into life annuity and long-term care. Don't Worry, Retire Happy is broader, covers more topics, but they're both very relevant to an optimal retirement.
Wow, it makes sense. So giving people the simple step solutions to find the most optimal retirement for them. So, when you talk about the math and science and you've researched some of the PhDs and the white papers that most people never look at, most people just get their information from these 15-second sound bites. You should buy a term and invest the difference. These little things that we hear along the way. What are some of the resources you've peered through, Tom, that's proving that is optimal compared to just using assets and retiring with just withdrawals from those assets?
Well, I mean, the white papers are clear, and I was just listening to Dr. Michael Finke, a PhD, just a few months ago. We were in Iowa together, and he said economists are unanimous. So there's no discussion about should you have an annuity or not. You have to. Okay, that's what all the economists will tell you. The question is what type and when. Those are the questions, not whether you should have one. It's a simple exercise. I always tell people, if they don't believe it, it's very simple to prove me wrong. All you have to just build a portfolio that you think I cannot beat. Yeah, just put all the good stocks in there. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reach into that portfolio. I'm going to remove some of the bonds. I'm going to replace those bonds with guaranteed lifetime income from some form of annuity. Do you know what that will do to every single portfolio? It'll lower the risk and increase the returns. Now, that's a very simple challenge. If I'm wrong, somebody should be able to prove me wrong just like that. But here's why they can't. Inside of a portfolio, the way that lifetime income functions, it functions like a AAA rated bond with a CCC rated yield with 0 standard deviation.
Wow.
So go back to the challenge. Built a portfolio, and I simply took out his bonds and replaced them with a AAA rated bond with a CCC rated yield with 0 standard deviation. What would that do to every one of his portfolios? It would lower the risk and increase the returns. Again, this is math and science. I don't sell annuities. I don't care if anybody wants to buy one or not. The math and science says that you got to, okay? You've got to, because you got to take longevity risk off the table, and that's the number one risk in retirement. Stocks can't do it. Bonds can't do it. Real estate can't do it. Bitcoin can't do it. I mean, only an annuity can do it, and I'm not making it up. I mean, this is in all the white paper. So I just take this information and try to share it with people.
That's wonderful. Yeah, because we do live events, Tom, where we do education on Social Security and retirement, and it's so sad. It happens all the time. I mean, it never doesn't happen at one of these events. Some sweet little, 85-year-old lady will walk up to me at the end of the event and go, "Gosh, that was a great, presentation. I learned a lot. I don't think I'm a good client for you. My husband passed. I have my Social Security check. I just moved in with my daughter." And it's such a sad way to transition towards the end of your life. But yet when you're sitting with a couple 20 years, 30 years earlier, and, they're like, "Well, I hate annuities and I don't believe in life insurance," right? And so it's like, the two products that are built to make sure that doesn't happen to the little sweet little widow, why is it that people hate them so much?
No, they don't hate them. They don't understand them. And so what I will tell you is, part of it when I train financial advisors, I say, you got to communicate this. And again, it shouldn't be your opinion, shouldn't be my opinion. Let's go to what the research shows. Let's look at what mathematically and scientifically will give you the most for the least, because that's what retirement's all about, is getting the most for the least. And for example, I just use me as an example. I mean, I own 11 annuities. I wouldn't own one. I would not own one single one if they were a bad product. Now, why do I own annuities? Simple. I have enough money to retire. So if I have enough money to retire today, what is the worst thing I could do? The worst thing, lose my money.
Right. Yeah.
I work 30 or 40 years. I save, I invest, I do everything right. And then 6 months before I retire, the market crashes and stays down for 20 years. And that'd be the stupidest thing for me to do. Look, I want to make as much as I can make, but more importantly, I don't want to lose what I've already got.
Right.
But some form of annuity can do that for me. So I have different annuities for different reasons. I buy deferred income annuities that give me the highest guaranteed income for the rest of my life. I have fixed indexed annuities with income riders that can give me a higher potential return, not as high guaranteed, but higher potential. And then I've got some variable annuities that I use for my most aggressive money, where I want to make as much as I can make, but I don't want to lose what I've already got. Well, right. That's what they do. And so, if people, and then, we've got 4 kids. And one day we're sitting around saying, how much should we leave to the kids? I don't know. What do you think? I said, well, if we bought a $1 million second die life insurance policy, name the 4 kids beneficiary, when we're both gone, they're going to get $1 million tax-free. Well, so that's what we did. We bought a $1 million second die policy, named the 4 kids beneficiary. That policy is completely paid up. Do you know what the total cost of that policy was? $150,000. So now think about that. For 15 cents on the dollar, we get to leave our kids $1 million tax-free. Who gets to spend all the rest of the money? We do.
Right.
See, if I want to spend my money, I leave them life insurance for pennies on the dollar. But if people understood that, they wouldn't hate life insurance. They wouldn't hate annuities. They love what it does. They've just been told they're bad, and they need somebody who's smarter than who told them they're bad, that, hey, they're not bad. They're actually pretty darn good, and you can't retire optimally without them. And I can prove all of this mathematically and scientifically. I don't sell those products. I don't care if people buy them or not. The research shows they should.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. And at the Retirement Research Foundation, we're an organization that's built on education. We're not pro or anti annuity or life insurance or any other financial vehicle. We don't talk about any of, the specific advice. We're just pro solution, pro finding what fits the client's needs and the person's circumstances the best. And, when you're saying taking longevity risk off the table, that's becoming a big concern. I mean, a lot of these sweet little widows that I mentioned earlier, they could have been served with some type of form of guaranteed lifetime income or guaranteed paychecks for life to make sure that they didn't end up in a situation where they felt destitute or, ran out of money.
Well, and Danny, because people are living longer, medical technology keeps improving.
Yeah.
Right now, if you have a 65-year-old couple, there's a 50% chance that one of them will live to be 93 and a 25% chance one of them will live to be 97. So the big risk is that people underestimate how long they're going to live. They all say, oh, I'm not going to live that long. I'm feeling kind of sore already. I probably won't even last till Thursday. Well, that person's probably going to live to be 102, and they're just not thinking about it. They think about, well, my dad died when he was 72. That has nothing to do with how long you're going to live. Every generation typically lives, 10 to 15 years longer than the previous generation. And people just they can't grasp that they're going to live to be 110 or 120. The first person to live to be 140 is alive today.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that. So longevity risk is a key. Buying a guaranteed lifetime income annuity to cover the basic needs and expenses. But you also have Social Security in there as a form of guaranteed lifetime income for people. You see these seminars 4 a week. There's 4 a week at the library right down the street from my office here in Mesa. Just, Tom, you're an economist. What's the most important thing people need to understand about Social Security? You see people all the time saying, well, I'm going to take it right at 62 because the government's going broke and I'm worried I'm not going to get my benefit.
Yeah.
Is that the right answer? Or, I know everybody's situation is different. They have to work with a professional to find out how to maximize. But what would you say about Social Security maximization?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. The breadwinner should delay. So let's say you have a husband and wife. Mm-hmm. If the husband made more money than the wife, if the wife wants to take hers early, I got no problem with that. But the husband or the breadwinner, whoever that is, should wait till 66 or 70 because that check covers both lives. And if he takes that check early, he locked her into a lower survivor benefit. So I don't care if he thinks he's going to die. It doesn't matter. That check goes to whoever lives the longest. And so The breadwinner should delay as long as possible, okay? The lower earning spouse can claim early if they want. That way they're getting in some income. And what I teach financial advisors is to build a bridge. Show the client, okay, if you took your Social Security, let's say they take it early, for every $1,000 that they should take at 66, if they take it at 62, it's only $750. But if they wait till age 70, it's $1,320. So what we do is we build them a bridge. We give them income from 62 to 70 with another product. You can use a mutual fund, you can use an annuity, you can use a CD, whatever you want. But give them that income from 62 to 70 from another source. And then their Social Security kicks in at age 70 with the highest amount. And that will pay them as long as either one of them is alive. So that helps protect against longevity, because what is Social Security? It's a lifetime income annuity. So when people say they don't like annuities, I say, well, then you got to cancel your Social Security check, because you can't tell me you don't like annuities and take your Social Security, because that's an annuity, right? A pension is an annuity. So if you really hate annuities, you got to cancel your pension, you got to cancel your Social Security. And they go, whoa, whoa, whoa. We like those annuities. It's just those insurance company annuities we don't like, Then we get into that discussion.
What do people have to be careful of taking their advice from the talking heads? I mean, even a video like this, the radio personalities, like what do people need to be careful of when they're hearing this over and over again on the radio and TV?
I tell everybody, you got to do your due diligence. When I wrote my book, I say, look, I'm going to lay out the math and science, but I encourage you to do your due diligence. Just you'll confirm everything I've already done. You can read all the white papers. I sourced it all. So it's all right there. They can read everything with their own two eyes, and they'll find out everything I put in there was correct. It's based in math and science, but you got to do your due diligence. And
yeah, and you've put those resources in your book, Towers Watson. You've put the white papers that nobody
Dr.
sees.
David Babel, Robert C. Merton, Nobel Prize winner, Dr. Michael Finke, Dr. Wade Pfau, the American College, Jamie Hopkins, Forbes magazine. I mean, there's a lot of great resources there that, again, I'm not making it up. It's all math and science. So it's very clear when you do your real research and cut through all the bullcrap that, there is an optimal way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. And the Retirement Research Foundation, we have nothing against these talking heads, but I think that what is concerning is, it's like there's people that are great marketers, maybe not educators, but marketers. There's, being on TV, like you said, every 5 minutes, that's going to do something to a consumer who's watching that over and over and over again. And they may be brilliant marketers, but I always look to the economists and the people who aren't selling anything for the true advice on, what you should do to retire and if an annuity could be a suitable piece of a portfolio or not.
Yeah. And again, I don't sell any financial products whatsoever. I don't care if people buy them or not, but all the research shows that they should. And, the thing is, I'm not against stocks. I have money in the stock market. I'm not against real estate. Real estate fits into everything that I've talked about, but in the right position. You shouldn't have all your money in stocks. You shouldn't have all your money in real estate, and you shouldn't have all your money in annuities or life insurance either. And it's all about how do you put the pieces of the puzzle in the best order to get the most for the least.
That's great. Simplify. That's what I love about all your teachings and your books that I've read before. It's so simple. I mean, an annuity can be, a very complex concept if you're talking about all the different intricacies and different types, but you break it down and make things so simple that, the person who has maybe very little retirement or financial education or none can go through the book and clearly read and understand what these products do and how they fit in certain circumstances, which I think is an important piece of the education process. So, Tom, last week we saw a lot of indicators in the economy that there's going to be a recession. You do a great economic commentary on YouTube that you put out for free every year. Why are they saying there's going to be a recession? What are they talking about? And why is everybody panicked?
Well, first of all, I don't believe a recession is imminent. I'm not saying that we're not going to have one. We will have one someday, but not right away. I mean, unemployment's the lowest it's ever been. I mean, the consumers are doing fantastic. This is the best economy I've ever lived in my entire life. So I don't see a recession just right around the corner. The reason they're saying it is because the yield curve inverted, where the 2-year is paying a higher rate than the 10-year. Normally, short term is here, then intermediate term, longer term. So the longer you wait, the higher the interest rate. When it inverts, then that's a sign of an impending recession. Not all the time, but almost every recession is preceded by an inverted yield curve. But the curve is inverted without it being a recession in the past. So there's a lot of things going on around the world. I can't cover it all in this little video, but people can Google Tom Hegna Economic Commentary, and I explain why interest rates are not going higher. they're probably not going to be higher, much higher for the rest of my life, actually. They could be down for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And people find that hard to believe. But I mean, when the 30-year bond went under 2% last week, what is that telling you? The bond market is telling you they do not see interest rates going up for 30 years. That's what the bond market is telling you. And you don't have to listen to me. The bond market would not be at 1.98% for a 30-year bond if they thought there was any inflation, if they thought that interest rates were going higher. So, there's a lot of reasons. There's demographics. The world is awash in debt. That debt is going to have to be delevered at some point. There's a lot of reasons out there, but I don't see a recession looming in the near term, but interest rates are likely to remain low for a very, 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 very long time.
Well, that's an important piece of commentary because a lot of people would argue that, and you've been right for many years so far. Let's go back to that inverted yield curve for a second, because I know that's the reason why, but for the average person watching who's like, what the heck is an inverted yield curve? I don't know what that means or why that's significant. What is the track record there? Why are people seeing an inverted yield curve and thinking recession?
Well, because almost every recession has been preceded by an inverted yield curve. It doesn't mean that 100% of inverted yield curves result in a recession, but 100% of recessions have been preceded by an inverted yield curve. So that's why everybody thinks that way.
Okay, so just track record and history. I want to talk for a minute about a movie that you were a part of that was really fun to watch. This is The Power of Zero. And this was an eye-opener. This had a ton of different economists, former comptroller David Walker, some financial legends, including yourself in there. What was your big takeaway from that process in making that movie, Tom?
Well, I mean, it was interesting. It's all about the debt, the massive government debt, and the unfunded obligations. I mean, our debt's over 22 trillion. We have almost 200 trillion of unfunded obligations for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, government pensions, military pensions. It's a financial mess, and it's really a math problem. And what the movie did was just identify what the problem is, and then say that taxes are going to have to go up. It's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's just a math problem. Taxes are going to go up, and when they go up, what are they going to hit? They're going to hit 401ks. They're going to hit IRAs. They're going to hit all the places people have their money. Yeah. And the end of that movie was simply saying that. You should try to get money into Roth IRAs or permanent life insurance so that you're sheltered from this impending tax situation.
Okay, so Tom, one thing that you just brought up is, they're going to hit those 401ks, IRAs, these fully taxable deferred accounts. One thing that freaks me out, and I see this all the time, is people identify an income goal. They identify what they need for their basic needs and expenses in retirement, which is part of step one, right, which is important. Then they identify the things they want to do, the play checks, the travel. Maybe play check means donating to the local theater, ballet, whatever their play check is defined. They do a really good job of getting to that number, right? And then they build a plan with a professional where they hit that number using fully taxable income, supplements from 401ks, either through an annuity or some other vehicle, Social Security, pension. And that freaks me out because when I watch this movie, all the way through, and I've seen it several times now, if somebody hits their income goal of $6,000 a month, and then you see a 10 or 20% tax increase, you just lost your goal. You just failed. And so, the importance of shifting to Roth IRA or life insurance that has a tax-free potential loan or distribution will be giving them some tax diversification. Why is tax diversification so important today?
Well, tax diversification is critical because most people right now have almost all their money in pre-tax. They have it in IRA, 401k, profit sharing. And all that stuff is going to be taxed. It's going to be taxed 100%, and they are going to raise taxes. And so what I say is, if your entire life you've talked about asset allocation, diversification of risk, and everything. Well, you got to tax diversify too. That means you got to put some. I'm not saying all, but put some money in a tax-free bucket. Convert some IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA. Put some money into permanent life insurance that can be taken out of retirement tax-free. Because let me tell you what, I've been around now for 50 some odd years, and I've seen presidents come in, raise taxes. I've seen presidents come in, they cut taxes. Well, guess what? When they raise taxes, guess what you can do? You take money out of your tax-free bucket. When they cut taxes, then you can take money out of your taxable bucket. But if all you have your money is in pre-tax, and we got all this debt and all these things are going to happen, I mean, it's going to be a disaster for a lot of people. And another big disaster that people don't see is Medicare. Premiums are going up, and I've seen projections. They're scary. I mean, super scary. That for higher income people, 100% their Social Security benefit will be eaten up by Medicare at some point. And it's not that long in the future. I mean, I'm talking 10, 12, 15 years where for the higher level people that they're going to get zero tax Social Security. It's going to all pay for their Medicare. And so I'm telling you, there's some scary things out there. And that's why you need to be diversified, not just with investments, but also tax diversified.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, we don't spend enough time talking about the after-tax implications of if you need to cash in your IRA to pay for medical costs. I mean, like nobody's having these conversations, and it's so important. I got an opportunity to interview Professor Kutlikoff, and we spent a lot of time talking about the retirement crisis. Why are people concerned about a retirement crisis, Tom?
Oh, well, think about it. Pensions are pretty much gone.
Yeah.
You got 78 million baby boomers retiring, 10,000 every single day. All right. Most of them are getting their Social Security advice from the Waffle House wise men. And they walk in and they say, what do I should take my Social Security? And they say, well, 62, because the government's run out of money. Better get to getting while the getting's good. So they're taking that out. And they're living longer. Medical technology is developing exponentially here in the future. And so when you add people are living longer, they don't have a pension, they're taking their Social Security too early. They haven't saved enough money. That's a retirement crisis. Taxes are going to go up. Medicare premiums are going to go up. That's a retirement crisis. That's why they're talking about it. It's going to be a crisis. There's going to be millions and millions and millions of people that run out of money.
Yeah, I had Van Miller on. You speak with him at certain occasions and different events, and we talked about another scary scenario that just really freaks me out. I mean, if you have somebody who has all their money in 401ks and IRAs, and they're heavily allocated, using different investment vehicles or whatever their choice is, and you see a steep market crash, you see them raise taxes, and you see them cut benefits. I mean, you could see how that would be catastrophic for somebody in a very short amount of time who had a good or somewhat of a plan, or maybe didn't plan enough. But I mean, that's what freaks me out about this retirement.
Listening to put it in the stock market. Look, I'm not against the stock market, but I'm against having too much money in the stock market. Okay?
Yeah.
What you've got to do is you've got to be balanced so that you can be guaranteed you'll never run out of money, and only an annuity can do that. So you got to have some of that, right? And then that allows you to actually take a little more risk if you want to in your portfolio to protect yourself against inflation. Then you got to have a plan for long-term care. And most people want to leave a legacy to their kids or grandkids of some amount of money. But instead of leaving them money and denying yourself a retirement, spend every last penny you got, leave them life insurance. Buy a life insurance policy for pennies on the dollar to go to the kids and grandkids, and then spend your money. But the problem is people don't know how to spend it. And if you're in the market and the market's crashing, I'll give you an example. People think that all markets go up and down, but over time they always go up. Well, that's fine if you're in your 20s and 30s and you dollar cost average in the market, you close your eyes and you wake up on your 65th birthday, you're rich. Hey, it worked. Great. It doesn't work when you're in your 50s and 60s and 70s. And here's why. Because it's no longer dollar cost averaging. It is now dollar cost ravaging. Because what happens is, if you're in a portfolio and you're taking money out of a portfolio, everything's fine as long as the market's going up. But as soon as the market starts going down, guess what you have to do? You have to take out more and more and more. And then when the market goes back up, none of that grows back because you already took it out. And then the market goes down again, you got to take out more and more and more. And when the market goes back up, none of that grows back because you took it out. People don't understand this. And it only takes a couple of those dips before the portfolio enters a death spiral that it will never come out of. And then people think, oh, I'll just wait it out. Does anybody remember the lost decade? That just happened about 10 years ago, where for 10 years, the market did not go up. The Japanese market has been down for over 30 years. Now think about that poor Japanese guy. He was taught markets go up and down, but over time, they always go up. He was 65. He had a diversified portfolio. Market crashed. He's now 95. 95. The market never came back. Except here's the deal. He never made it to 95. He didn't even make it to 70 because he died of the stress and running out of money. See, people don't understand that can happen here too. Japan was going to take over the world in the 80s. They're buying Pebble Beach. They bought Rockefeller Center. The market's been down for over 30 years.
Yeah, that's just absolutely frightening. And that's one of the things that I have such a trouble time explaining at live events, because it's very hard to prove to somebody who's been taught that their whole life that average returns matter. You can make 10% a year and pull out 5 and have no problem. And then you talk about, Tom, in your teachings where, look, you just talked about that whole thing, how average returns don't really matter once you transition into retirement, because you're pulling from that portfolio and enters in the order of returns and sequence risk. And that is such a difficult concept, but such an important concept for somebody who's trying to retire without an annuity to give them that guaranteed income for the rest of their life. You know, you just explained it, but I saw you once on a program where you talked about, I know we don't have your slides up, but you talked about two guys, and you talked about this in Paychecks and Playchecks too. You know, they both averaged 10% return, but one retired, and then they ran out of money. Can you kind of go over that example and see if we can simplify what sequence risk is and why it's so devastating for people that don't understand it?
Yeah, so in Paychecks and Playchecks, to give an example, two guys vested back in 1973, 50% stock, 50% bonds. They averaged 10.1% a year for 22 years. And the guy who was saving and investing, it didn't matter if the market went up earlier, went down late, because he averaged 10.1%. He wound up with a bunch of money. But the other guy retired in 1973, and his broker told him he could take out 5% per year. Well, guess what? He was dead broke. Now, how can you average 10.1% for 22 years, only take out 5% and go dead broke? People don't get it. They don't understand it.
It's hard.
What the first couple of years, the market went down, down, down. And he was taking out more and more and more. When the market went up, none of that grew back. And then the market went down again. He took out more and more, and he ran out of money because the portfolio can enter a debt spiral. And people do not understand it. They just think, well, if you average 10.1% a year, certainly you can take out 5. No, you can't. The Morningstar says the safe withdrawal rate is 2.8%. And people just, it doesn't make sense to them, because if you're averaging 10 or 12, how come you have to only take out 2.8? It's because of this sequence of returns risk. And that's why if they would put some money in annuity, they could be guaranteed 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% guaranteed for the rest of their life without that sequence of returns risk. But they don't want to do it because it's an annuity. It's just an educational process is what it is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Getting a better educational process. And that's what this organization is devoted to, is just creating a more educated, more informed consumer so they can make better choices than relying on, the 15-second soundbite commercials, which were really never meant to be financial education. They were just meant to hook you and sell you on something.
Right.
Right. And so let's get outside of your realm of expertise. I mean, your realm of expertise is vast, but I'm outside of your specific teachings for a second. I read an article on Investopedia that was talking about the next bank bailout will be something called a bank bail-in. And there's actually some kind of frightening laws out there. I don't know if we talked about this in our prep, Tom, but is there something you can address on that? They were talking about the situation that happened in Cyprus. What do bank depositors need to understand about these new laws that could be, potentially, fatal for their bank savings?
Well, I mean, our banks are the safest probably in the world. So, I mean, I wouldn't be buying anything doing with banks in Greece or Italy or Spain. We'll find out what's going to happen to banks by just watching them. Okay. Yeah. But our banks are pretty healthy right now. That doesn't mean that if there's a severe, market crash that the banks couldn't have problems. They could, but they're much more solid today than they have been probably in the last 50 or 60 years. So I think banks are okay, but when people are talking about FDIC insurance, you go back to that little 85-year-old widow. A lot of them, go to the bank because they have FDIC insurance, and I always say, well, is FDIC insurance important to you? And they go, oh yes, it's very important. I say, okay, let's go to the website www.fdic.gov and let's read about FDIC insurance, and you'll read that there's this amount of FDIC insurance for this amount in CD. So I say, if people really want FDIC insurance, we should get online. We should find the smallest, weakest bank in America, and that's where you should buy your CD from. They say, smallest, weakest bank? What are you talking about? I said, well, the way I got it figured is if banks start failing, the smallest, weakest ones will fail first, and you got a shot at some of that FDIC insurance. Otherwise, I might stick to a highly rated, a financial services company like a big insurance, AAA insurance company or AA or whatever, a very strong financial institution to do business with.
Yeah, that makes sense. So people are, knocking FDIC or counting on FDIC like it's rock solid. But like you just pointed out, if you actually go to their website, there's not enough insurance to cover all the major banks or any one major bank.
Yeah. I mean, the government can print more money. They can do all kinds of other things. But, there isn't like this big pot of money sitting there to make everybody whole.
Yeah. Tom, I know we're wrapping up here. Do you have time for just a couple more questions?
Sure.
Okay. Let's talk about this for a second. We had Van Miller on and we talked for a little bit about some different products. You talk about life insurance in your books, talk about annuities. Paychecks and Playchecks, you break down certain annuities. But I haven't heard you talk that much about specific life insurance. And one thing that Ben and I talked about at length in our interview was the modified endowment contract, and its use or its place in the in the mix or potential recommendation. And so, I find that when I've done a little bit of speaking and traveled part of the country talking, it's really a very undervalued and underutilized tool, even amongst the insurance agents. So there's kind of like this stigma because of its tax status that it's not valuable. But I've heard you talk about places where, and this situation comes up, you have somebody who potentially wants to leave some assets to their heirs, and they're like, well, don't touch this $100,000 over here. This is for my kids. And I've heard you speak to that concept about, well, that's not really efficient. You're leaving $100,000, transfer $100,000. Why don't you buy $50,000 worth of life insurance, leave $100,000? Can you talk about the MEC for a second and maybe where it serves its place?
Well, I mean, a MEC, modified endowment contract, really only matters is if you're trying to take money out of the contract, then it's taxable. If you're using it for a death benefit, it really doesn't matter. So I go back to my example where we put in $150,000 to buy $1 million of insurance that would go to our kids. Well, for 15 cents on the dollar, we transfer $1 million to our kids. Do we care if that's a MEC or not? I'm not going to take that cash value out. That's for the kids. But instead of leaving $1 million going to the kids, we took $150,000 to transfer $1 million. That's why you use life insurance. It's the leverage. It's getting the most for the least. And that's what I always talk about. How do you get the most income for the least amount of money? How do you leave the most to your kids for the least amount of money? It's all about getting the most for the least. It's the best value. I'm a big value guy. There's a difference between being cheap and being value. Cheap, you go to the dollar store, you can buy a dollar wrench and you put it on a bolt and take one and it breaks into 1 million pieces. That's kind of like a low fee mutual fund. It's cheap, okay? But it doesn't give you good value. The annuity might have higher fees if it's a variable annuity, but it does so much more. And so it's where can you get the most for the least? And that's what I write and talk about.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's an important factor and a great metric to determining if you're making a good decision or not.
Yeah.
Drop my book. Okay, last things. You wrote a white paper that I love. I think this is, in my opinion, honestly, Tom, and I don't mean any offense by this. I don't know how you feel about your own literature. This one's my favorite, hands down. I think it was the easiest to read. I've read it multiple times. And there's one line in here on the first page that I don't want to quote your own reading to you, but I want to ask you about this. It says, income annuities offer features others can't. High cash flow, uncorrelated market returns, retirement alpha, in the form of mortality credits, which only life insurance companies can manufacture, longevity hedging, and liquidity hedging. Okay, so two things in there that most people have never heard of, mortality credits and retirement alpha, which I think is the title of the white paper, Retirement Alpha, How Mortality Credits Can Improve Your Outcome in Retirement. Can you talk about this for a second and just talk about what is retirement alpha, what are mortality credits, and why are they important to people who are considering retirement?
Well, you're really going to like this, Danny. We just updated that. So we just took it up through 2019. So you're going to really love the update. I love it. I think it's maybe the best piece that I've ever done. I really do. And I think you're going to see more of it because we're going to partner with some other organizations to co-brand it and everything else. But so every check you get from an insurance company is composed of 3 parts when it's from an annuity. One part is principal. Anybody can give you principal. One part is interest. Anybody can give you interest. But the third part is the secret sauce. This is why you've got to use an annuity because you can't get these mortality credits from stocks or bonds or Bitcoin or real estate. And it's these mortality credits. It's extra money from the risk pool. The older you are and the longer you live. And I had another advisor who said, I call mortality credits other people's money. He says, I work with a bunch of baby boomers. They haven't saved enough money. The only shot they got is if I pool them with a bunch of other baby boomers who haven't saved enough money. And the ones that die early, some of their money goes to the ones that live longer. And so everybody will make it for the rest of their life if they pool their money together. And that's the whole strategy around these income annuities. It's risk pooling. And you get extra money the longer you live and the older you are. And so no other product gives this to you. Only income annuities can do that for you. And they work differently with the different annuities. So like with a SPIA, a single premium immediate annuity, or a DIA, deferred income annuity, every check you get is part principal, part interest, and part mortality credit. Yeah. With a fixed indexed annuity or a variable annuity, it works differently. There, if a person puts in $100,000 and turns on the income rider, well, guess what? The $100,000 could go to zero at some point. It will after some point, but the income doesn't stop. The income keeps getting paid as long as they're alive. Well, what's paying this income if there's no more money in the account? That's the mortality credits. That's the stuff that guarantees you will never, ever, ever run out of money. And the thing that people don't understand about mortality credits is they already have experienced it. You experience it with life insurance. And I'll explain it this way. If you're 20 years old, you can buy $1 million policy, life insurance policy, for $25 a month. You can write one check for $25, step in front of a bus. The insurance company will pay your beneficiary $1 million. Now, how can they afford to pay $1 million if they only got one check for $25? Right. Well, because they got 999 other 25-year-olds still paying their premiums, and they didn't step in front of a bus. Because the odds of you dying when you're young are very low. The reason these annuities can pay 10, 11, 12, 13, 14% guaranteed is because they know a 90-year-old, not all the 90-year-olds are going to live to be 105. Some of them are going to die, the next year. And so because of this risk pooling, they can pay older people more than what they probably should, and they give people lower premiums on their life insurance when they're young because it's all actuarially calculated. Again, I'm not making this up. It's all math and science. It's all actuarially calculated.
That's incredible. And that contributes to the retirement alpha of somebody trying to. So
that quote you read was from the Financial Research Corporation of Boston. They wrote a white paper. You can still find it. You can Google income annuities improve portfolio outcomes. That's the name of it. Income annuities improve portfolio outcomes. It's still out there on the web. And they called these mortality credits a new form of alpha. See, alpha is the extra return that a fund manager brings. Like, if Warren Buffett knows what to buy, what to sell, when to buy, when to sell, if he does better than the S&P 500, he's considered bringing alpha to the portfolio. Well, they said these mortality credits are a new form of alpha, retirement alpha, that you cannot get from stocks or bonds or real estate, and they can't give it to you. And so that's why I named the title of that white paper Retirement Alpha, because people haven't heard of it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think such a key consideration for people retiring today. Tom, as we wrap up, what would be the most important things people should be keeping their eyes on? If they're retiring today, what would you encourage them to really be paying attention to and be mindful of during this time?
Well, I would say this. Retirement is not what you've been told. Retirement is all about income. It's not about assets. It's not about whether you have $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. None of that matters. What matters is how much money do you have coming in every single month? Because if you have enough money coming in every single month, you don't care what the market does. Market's down 40%, good. I'm playing another 18 holes of golf. It's all about having income in retirement. You can't spend assets, you spend income. And if you have a bunch of assets sitting in the market, you're always going to be scared. Oh, market's going to go down. Oh, I don't want to take out too much. Oh, we can't go on a vacation this year. Market's down 40%. Is that really what you want in retirement? Yeah. Or would you rather have guaranteed income coming in that no matter what happens, you can go out and live the retirement you're entitled to? So, it's not hard. Having a happy and successful retirement is not hard. It's very simple, but it's not so easy. You gotta read, you gotta research. I've laid it all out in my books. I've laid it all out in my videos. So I make it as simple as I can. But if you just follow some simple steps, you can have a happy and successful retirement. It does not have to, this is not rocket science. Well, it kind of is. If you do the research, there's rocket science behind the simple way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. That totally aligns with our message at the Retirement Research Foundation, which help people retire sooner, smarter, and safer, bringing resources like the economist Tom Hegna, who studied the math and science behind a successful retirement and broken it down into really a couple simple steps. And by working with the right professional, people can put those in place. So, Tom, I just want to personally thank you. This has been such a joy for me to spend time with you this afternoon. I know you're taking some time off from speaking and traveling, so to take time for the Retirement Research Foundation and myself means the world to us. Thanks for spending some time with us. And everybody out there, thanks for watching.
Thank you, Daniel.